Welcome to Enlightened Connections, a space for intuition, healing, and remembering what connects us. I'm Lisa Aston Michael. If you'd like to continue these conversations, follow on Spotify and stay with us. Welcome, everybody, and thank you once again, as always, for joining us today on Enlightened Connections. I am thrilled today to welcome Wendy Pleydell, a Brisbane-based professional astrologer. She's a teacher as well, civil wedding celebrant, and registered dog judge. That's an interesting melting pot right there. With over 50 years of experience exploring her crafts and intuitive practices, Wendy's built a remarkable career guiding clients across Australia. She ran her first astrology practice on the Morning Peninsula for 15 years and has since deepened her knowledge through formal studies at the Chiron Centre in Melbourne and with accredited FAA teachers Brian Clark and Glenys Launton. Wendy's approach to astrology combines extensive technical knowledge with initiative guidance, helping people connect with the universal heartbeat through self-realization. She teaches and mentors both online and in person, offering astrology consultations, classes, and monthly gatherings for small groups, such as the Northside Astrology Social Astronauts. Astronauts, I love that. So whether you're new to astrology or you're a seasoned student, Wendy's going to bring clarity, confidence, and ease to her teachings, helping her clients cultivate meaningful relationships with the stars and themselves. Welcome, Wendy.
Oh, thank you very much, Lisa. My astronauts is actually NASA.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yes, it's NASA when it's shortened. So I went, oh, that's a great my husband came up with that, and I went, that's got it. That's definitely got it.
I love it. My feeling around that was, everything can be taken so seriously, and so because astrology is very much a container, and astronauts is like, nah, we're going to have fun with this and enjoy
Absolutely.
Astrology. I love that.
Yeah.
So, Wendy, there's so much to talk about. Just before I hit the go button, listeners, we were having a little chat about what's happening in the world right now. And I'm going to just, first of all, touch on a personal, question with Wendy for her own journey into astrology. And then we're going to have a little look later on about what's happening right now and how we're all kind of feeling like we're in a barrel rolling down a hill and what the hell is happening. And I'm pretty sure Wendy's going to shine some light on that. But for the moment, let's look at your background, Wendy, with over 50 years of experience.
Yeah.
How's your understanding of astrology evolved from when you first began your practice and to now? And I know it's a big question, but especially, just have a think about that, because especially with the rise of online platforms like Zoom and social media and how that might have affected. What's your journey been like?
Well, yes, all those things are available now, but when I started the journey, there was nothing really available. So it was books. So if I had to access astrology at that time, I'd be writing to the Theosophical Bookshop in Melbourne, and you couldn't get online to look at their catalogues or anything. You were just sort of really just getting in touch, and it was very hard to get in touch with people at that time that were on the same page. So it's really evolved, big time. I mean, I had books when I was 15. My mother had given me because I requested, I had an interest in astrology. And then I think I had my first chart reading done when I was 26 years old. And then that particular person who was an astrologer put me in touch with astrologers, and there my journey began at that time. So I was able to one particular astrologer, Don Rogers, he gave me my first computer program, which was very archaic back. It was wonderfully new back then, but it was one of the really old computers that you would see probably back in that particular time. And off I went with my new programs and just flew from there. But yeah, there's just from that particular time back then to now, there's just been huge leaps and bounds. I mean, astrology wasn't even a spoken word back then. It was voodoo if you were known to be an astrologer, like so many connotations of bad vibes of you actually even wanting to go down that particular path. So, but now it's more out into the light, which is fabulous.
I think most of us, our foray into astrology was reading our sign. We didn't even know it was a sun sign back in the day. Just reading your sign in the newspaper and thinking, oh, that fits me.
Yeah.
And was that kind of the beginning for you? Like, how did you find out about astrology? How did you get led into studying this?
Just intuitive, something I knew as a child. I automatically knew. I wasn't reading about it in magazines or anything at that particular time. I was too young to really be looking at, well, it might have been let's put it this way, it might have been the new idea. I might have looked up in the back of the new idea because my grandmother lived with us at that time. And I can't think of her name, Marigold. What her particular name was. Anyway, she used to write for the New Idea. Karen Morgold.
That's it. I remember Karen.
Morgold used to write for the New Idea. So whether I looked at that back then, who knows? I don't know. But for you answer your question, I don't know at that time really whether I did. I just know that I knew about astrology for some reason. Having maybe experienced it in another life, who knows? So I'm pretty much sure I have.
So doing people's charts back then must have been an interesting experience. You would have had to have done it the old-fashioned way, really dig into the mechanics of astrology. As this day and age, you go online and you type in something and up comes your chart in your tropical chart or your Placidus chart or whatever comes up, and people are beginning to recognize those later editions of astrology and not really know the history of it or the mechanics of it. Or
No, I actually have done hand-drawn charts, but I've actually sat the calculations exam for that here in Brisbane and passed with distinction, I must say. But it's a lot of work because you're working with minutes, degrees and seconds when you're calculating someone's hand-drawn chart. And to become what we call an FAA accredited astrologer, they want you to have that peak body of understanding and knowledge so you know how it's actually done, even regardless of the fact that we still have programs, which is called Soul of Fire, and that we can use those, which is fantastic today. You just type in all the information and off you go. It's so easy. But yes, that's how it was done, to hand draw up a chart. So, and my first chart was through an astrologer who hand drew my chart at that time. So, and when I first had it done, I thought, wow, maths is not my strong forte. But yeah, I went down that track and I did really well. But you had to learn a lot about it, and thanks to a very good astrologer here in Brisbane who actually took me through those steps and taught me it all.
there's so many layers to it, isn't it? As you say, that
Layer
so complex. It's so complex. And how it reflects who we are, how it reads us, where all the planets were born at the time, where all the planets were placed at the time that we were born, is absolutely fascinating to me, right down to the smallest detail. And then, of course, you've got, the bigger charts where you read the countries or you read, certain celebrities or there's all unlimited depth.
There's huge amount.
So we'll talk a little bit about that.
They call those relocation charts for the countries, and there's a lot of that being used at the moment. So especially with all the great big events happening in the world, you can look at what's happening through countries all over the world. So say in the Middle East, we can look at all that across on our charts at the moment, relocation charts, and see what activity is actually taking place through planetary.
There's a lot going on for America at the moment. I mean, apart from knowing what you know in the news and what's going on in terms of the astrology chart.
Yes, it has its Pluto return. It's been experiencing that for the last couple of years. So
that's huge, absolutely huge. I often think about the astrologers in the days of old, going back a couple of thousand years, because astrology there's nothing new. It's not a new thing. It's thousands of years old, and you go right back to early days, early times, and a lot of the kings or leaders of countries would often consult their astrologer as to what
Correct.
decisions to make,
Yep,
what
they
was
wouldn't
coming
be
up.
pharaohs way back. The Saints actually taught numerology, but they also taught astrology way back in the pharaoh times.
Isn't it interesting how it was of the norm back then? And then
Yes.
somewhere in the linear line, someone decided it was witchcraft and woohoo and poo-poo and burnt everybody and and made everything, illegal. And of course, now that we look back on that, another leap in our journey,
Evolution, yes.
evolution, is that we can see that was all about control. Yeah. So very interesting. And I often think to myself, whether these times that are happening now, we read about these things in certain texts. For example, the book of Revelations, for example, at this time, we're coming into this time now. Was that astrologically predicted back in the day?
Oh,
Because
yes.
how would they possibly know that all this was going to happen now at this time, especially rising from the Middle East?
Oh, yes, definitely. They do know these things have always been, you know, in certain history and but they've all been under cover. They've all been under the Neptune, like the fog. So,
Yeah.
keeping it all, you know,
Yes.
voodoo for us. But
And all
anyway,
is being revealed right now, isn't
well,
it?
yeah, that's right. So
Mm, yeah.
Neptune and Saturn are joining up at the moment. So, and it's in Aries. So of course it's gone out of the Piscean where we're in the fog and it's coming out into the light into Aries now. So definitely, definitely
Mm. How does that patch up with the year of the fire horse?
fantastic because I mean they're both in fire signs. So it's definitely coinciding. So huge fire year, fire years ahead actually, but
Mm,
just as in 12 months for the fire horse.
mm,
But in general terms, it's going to be a lot longer for astrology that will be
mm.
experiencing the fire energy. So
That's a big thing for us as a race, I suppose, and animals too. It's not just us experience the changes, it's the animals as well. Everything here on planet Earth is going through these changes. But let's have a look at some other skills and experiences that you've had in your life. So you combine your astrology practice with other roles, including civil wedding celebrant and registered dog judge. Now, how do these seemingly different areas influence or maybe inform your astrological work?
well, with the dogs, because we started showing dogs over 30 years ago, and of course, naturally being an astrologer, I when we did breed litters, of course, I wanted to get on the phone or the computer, and because the litters were birthed at home, so I would go, "Oh, I want to look at this." And for the fact that in the show world, the ultimate show dog is a Leo, so sun signs so I thought, okay. And even in the fact of even trying to manipulate the births and the breeding cycles, which is not easy, and because they actually come into season 2 times a year generally, maybe 3 if you're lucky, but 2 times, and it's always usually, around the middle of the year and towards the end of the year. So you couldn't always dob, the right signs that you actually wanted. But then, of course, we have the ascendant and the moon, so in all the other planetary aspects. So some of them did get some Leo qualities in their chart. So, of course, yes, I got on the computer and as they were being born, I'd written down the birth times just to see what they actually came out like and in personality wise. And when you're raising the litter and things like that, I mean, mum raises a litter until they're about 5 to 6 weeks and then she hands them over to you because she's had enough, from feeding them and what have you. So, you see these little personalities come on board and you have clients that you've interviewed to death and to check out if they're going to be the right candidates for these pups for an forever home. So sometimes people would actually give me their birthdays so I could sort of see if I was, and interesting enough, if the pup would choose them or they would choose the pup. And you can only do so much like that, but you have to leave some of it up to fate with, what home they actually go to in a sense. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I worked with the dogs then, and of course we did go on and have great success with the show ring. If you'd said that my husband would have been interested in dog showing, you would have a lot of people would have laughed because he was the least person, but he's got a pretty competitive Mars in his chart, and of course he got in the ring and he did it, and that was the end of the story. So we went on to have dog floats, motorhomes, the cars. We travelled all over Australia showing with the dogs, and of course, committees, you name it. And look, it gave us a great lifestyle in that sense of joining up with people and just meeting people internationally as well, because that's we have a lot of overseas judges, and a lot of our judges go overseas as well. So
It's really interesting how you're talking about the importance of the signs. And so if you feel, if you're, what you're saying is that the sun signs make the good show dogs,
a
do you,
Leo.
the Leo, my little toy poodle, she'll be very happy to hear that. She's Miss Leo through and through and through. Do you find that if you look at their chart, is it similar to looking when you look at a human's chart? Are there certain personality traits that you've noticed with certain dogs?
Oh, yes, absolutely. With Maddie, who was the Leo, and she was Reman, Warstaff Bumblebee. They all have show names, and then they have home names, and then we
Mm.
give them nicknames.
Mm.
And because they were our kids virtually, because my husband and I didn't have any children, but
Mm.
we've got, his, her, ours, and mine.
Mm.
But so she would definitely, she was the Royal Highness of the household. So, she would go and sit in another lounge room away from everybody else. She had to have her own space, be looked after like royalty. And in the ring, she would look at a judge, like as if to look that judge in the face as if to say, well, look at me. So she really had a presence about her, and she was definitely a royal Leo queen, so for sure. Whereas some of the other breeds, they were the couple of the others that we bred, we had a Gemini female, we had I've had lots of Cancerians, but then they've had some of them have actually had maybe a Leo moon or some Leo planets,
Mm.
So, and they've done, especially two of mine. Well, Cancer's the next door sign to Leo.
Mm.
So both those, two of those Cancerians went on to do extraordinarily well in the ring as well.
Mm.
And they had a lot of presence in the ring as well,
Mm.
too. So,
Did you
yeah.
find the Cancerian dogs were wanting to please? They just were very receptive to the instructions?
The male wasn't, but the female was.
That's men all round though, really.
Yeah. The boy
Shouldn't-
dog wasn't, but he was well, I would say he was shy, and which is a very Cancerian trait. He didn't like having his photo taken, when he'd won, but he didn't really want to be in the show world, but he was excellent. So yeah, so shyness is very much a part of the Cancerian. But at home they were very homely, and they used to all compete for our attention, the Cancers.
So, if I'm wrong here, let me know, but I'm thinking if you know what your dog's chart is, you can actually work with that to better know them, to better understand them, and to get perhaps the best out of them that is them, that is who they are, rather than trying to make them something they're not or someone they're not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So
Very
yeah,
interesting.
if you knew that you wanted to dress up your little Leo, but the little Leo didn't really want to be dressed up, you
Mm.
would go, oh yeah, okay, I could run with that. But generally Leo do like to be the centre of attention.
Yes, my other poodle is a Pisces. He's a Pisces through and through. I don't know his chart, but he's absolutely Pisces. I don't know what's going on from one day to the next. He's all, very moody, very introvert, very pulled back, and having to live with her It's very, very demanding for him. And because a lot of the listeners are dog people, they're animal people.
Oh, okay, yes.
Most of my listeners are animal people. So
Right.
they're going to find this extremely interesting because a lot of them are professional breeders as well
Okay.
that have done very, very well in the shows and also with the working dogs.
Oh,
Very
okay.
done
Yes,
very
yeah.
well with the working
Working dog
dogs.
breed, yeah. That's group 5.
Yeah, so this will be very interesting to them because I can sort of in the back of my mind hear
Mm.
them saying, "Oh, what about this? And what about my girl? She's a Pisces. Is this why she does that?" So I think it's really super interesting that
Well,
we can.
I've written the 12 signs that went into Acrux, but I have been thinking about, because often they ask for different articles to go with Dogs Queensland newsletter, and I do know that another particular astrologer wrote some time back for them, but my bit, look, there's about 220 dogs across breeds across 7 groups. So a lot of my dogs in there, some of them, are not designer breeds, they're pure breeds that have been in that actually. So putting it in the Dogs Queensland newsletter, breeders would find it extremely fascinating to read
So
that as well.
so can how would they access that? Would they know to go there? Would they know to?
Well, they would know if they're members of Dogs Queensland to
Okay.
do that, but I haven't written into them yet to ask them whether they want the article because I didn't, it's a bit restricted to get to it in ACRAX because you have to be a member of the Queensland QFA, and I thought, "Oh, that's too limited for readers. I'd like to
Mm.
get it out a bit more to a wider audience because I think people really enjoy it." So
Oh,
there's Dog News Australia, and of course there's the QF, there's Dogs Queensland, which send out an email as well. So, but
okay.
I haven't put them on my site, my Facebook site, which is the Written in Stardust. I have a Facebook page there. I haven't put them on there, but I could possibly put them on there so readers could actually access that.
I think that would be a fantastic idea because I do a lot of work with animals as an energy healer, and a lot of my clients are horse breeders as well. I know
Yep.
you're primarily dogs, but I think that these charts would be fascinating for some of the people that I know.
Mm.
Absolutely would love to know more about this, Wendy. That's
Oh, yes.
I,
Yeah,
I don't
because of
doubt that.
course people like when we learn about structure about animals, becoming a dog judge isn't just about, you have to know the dog's anatomy and everything from the ground up. And that's lots of breeds. So, and the same in the horse world too. There's things about movement in horses and the same with dogs that we understand, when they're going in the ring and around the ring and they're being judged and all that. So there's a huge amount of information that I've learned over this time, training well, we're not all breeds, but we're particularly what they call breed judges at the moment. So
Mm,
my
mm,
husband has 3 groups: toys, which you've got toys,
mm,
and terriers and gun dogs.
mm,
So, and my husband will probably train in group 5, which is the working dog breeds, which you're talking about. You've got
mm.
clients there that are online that are interested as well. So it's a
Yes.
whole journey. I mean, 7 groups takes a lot of work. It's more than a university degree actually to do it, but it's a passion and something we've loved.
Yes, and I think when you're doing something that is a passion, whether it's an astrology, which for you is a calling, or the dog judging, I should say, which is also a
Yes,
passion, deep passion of yours, and being able to combine the two would be absolutely fascinating. Do you often see a dog come in the ring and think, "Oh, that's an Aries," or does it
yes,
cross your mind,
yes.
and then you think,
Oh, of course.
I can tell by their conformation,
Yes.
their body type, and some of them are, that dog there is successful because he's got the right body type for this class.
Well, I'll tell you, like you would look at I often look at bulldogs and go, yes, that's a Taurus because of
Yeah.
the body type, you know? And so I immediately see these things that people don't sort of probably see as, general people that are running around the ring with them. But I'm looking at it and going, oh, that dog's very Taurian, because of the body type. So,
Yes.
and characteristics and different things that are going on. So that's very much the intuitive side of astrology when you've done, for me, when I've done
Yes.
it for so long,
Yes.
from humans to animals, to whatever. And I actually did a presentation on that recently for the QFA, all on the intuitive side of astrology. And yes, it was really, really quite good. So that probably
That
people would be interested in that too. So
well, can people find out more about that on your
that
website or
they would have to borrow from the QFA library, so as well.
okay. Okay. All
There's
right.
an intuitive history of animals, so which is fascinating. You would probably find it fascinating, Lisa, I'm sure, because you would get
Mm,
something, a lot from it. So,
mm,
because they're all entwined, over the years. So,
mm.
and the dog's health. That's the other thing, the intuitive side of health and healing with animals. I mean, we would always take our dogs off to a healer, to look after their limbs and their muscles. And, it's a bit like having Bowen therapy,
Yes.
or some Reiki. So George had been working around, the particular guy had been working around animals and greyhounds,
Yeah,
fortunately.
that's
But he
another
was about
story.
90. But everybody went to him for years to take their animals to get their muscles and, health looked after like that. And the animals just knew they never got angry with him or anything, or, felt threatened or anything like that. It was fantastic. So, and they were much happier when they were looked after like that as well. Horses need adjusters, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I remember just briefly doing some Reiki. I did my Reiki master grades and animal Reiki and what have you many years back, and I was working on a horse, and it was actually the first time I'd worked on a horse.
Mm.
And this horse was just standing there, and she'd had an accident, and she was a bit tight. Anyway, I started working on her, and she put her front legs out and did this, like, almost backwards downward dog. She went right back, and I thought, "Oh my god, she's gonna fall
Relaxed.
over." Yeah, and then she stood back up, and then she went all the way forward again. And like, right down forward, totally stretched out. And it gave me a bit of a shock. I hadn't seen anything like that before, but the energy was working. The energy was doing its job
Absolutely.
on her.
Immediately that horse knew they had a safe space and they were working with it, so which
Yeah.
is fabulous. I did ride a lot of horses when I was younger
Yes. Yeah.
and did compete.
Yeah. Yes. They get in your blood, don't they, horses? Girls and ponies. What is it with girls and ponies, you know? We've got to have our ponies. I mean, it's like ponies and chocolate. That's the two main sources of survival for women, I think, for young girls.
I had a Welsh mountain pony. But
Oh,
so
beautiful.
mm,
Okay, so let's have a little bit of a look at astrology. Let's curve back to astrology.
yes,
And
yes.
it's often described as a tool for self-realization. So, can you share a story of a client whose life was transformed through the guidance of their chart, through you being able to
Well, I've got to think, when I was back on the Mornington Peninsula, I had a client come along and she was looking for, well, she'd had certain directions and indicators in her life. But I think she was looking just to sort of put the pieces together in the jigsaw puzzle. And she, I think, I've got to think back. I mean, with pointing out to her, I think she wanted to take yoga in lots of different directions. But I mean, looking at her chart, the chart prior to when she come, or when any client comes, and I sort of get a whole picture of the chart of what they're even going to ask before they come.
mm,
So I had a bit of an understanding about that before she came through the door, but more so I probably hit a few nerves for her
mm,
as to where she really wanted to take that particular part of her life. And she's gone on to leaps and bounds now and trained, quite highly with many different yogi masters and Reiki and crystals, and she's very successful on the Mornington Peninsula in Melbourne there with what she's doing now. So I mean, I can't sort of give away too much personal detail because there's client confidentiality,
mm,
which is very important for me in my business as well.
mm,
But
mm.
she does successfully have a business, and she's now working with many other healers as well in workshops and has loads and loads of different clients. She does beach yoga every summer and on the beach there, and she's just got people queuing up behind her big time to go and do that as well, as apart from offering her regular classes and things like that. But she wasn't quite sure of her focus and direction back then. But a good astrology reading, if people are open to it, will put them on the pathway quite quickly.
I find it interesting that you can look at your chart and it might say, well, because this planet is in this house under this sign, that's telling you that there's a block in this area. But you don't know that. But if you can come to someone like yourself, come to an astrologer and say, look, this is in your chart. However,
Mm.
what this is saying is that at this time, you can do this to unblock that, or this is how you can work around it. But here's another aspect, because I think we know intuitively, especially when we call to do something. I think we
Yes.
know it, but there might be little hindrances and blocks that are not there necessarily to stop us, but they're there for us to move through or grow through.
Well,
And
and it will depend what age they're coming. I mean, 28, you're going to have significant changes going on because that's your Saturn return. You'll hit your midlife transits, which are very usually significant, in your 30s to 40s. So there's always a lot of major changes that go on there. And of course, your Saturn return, as I said, at 28. You'll have your Chiron return at 51, 52. You'll have another Saturn return where you become the wiser, the wise person in your life, like the crone, the elder, when you hit that 50, 57, 58. And of course, then you do have a third and final one in your 80s. But, and then there's lots of other ones. But there's those significant transits in your life, really important. And they're the times that I'll often find clients will actually come to you because they're looking for direction about where they're going and what's happening in their life. So they're generally the main component that will come to you. So that's the usual. And around those age groups, when that particular person came, she fitted into her probably midlife. Well, they call it the midlife crisis.
yes, yes.
But she wasn't buying a red sports car, let's put it that way.
No.
But she was actually embracing her spiritual side more.
Mm, mm, yeah. They're always loads of fun, the midlife crises. And it's interesting, as you say, it does happen around that second Saturn return.
Usually the first Saturn return, you actually, because you're young and you're embracing lots of things that happen in your life, the second Saturn return is either, well, in my experience, it is with clients, is that they're obviously going, well, I've achieved this much in my life, but am I going to stay on this planet, or am I going to, move into another realm as an elder and take my knowledge and experience and teach it on with somebody else? So,
And I think sometimes I wonder if it's not always it's a decision that you make. Is it a decision that your chart makes? I had a complete 180-degree career change. I did not intend it in any way, shape, or form. And talk about from that end to the east to west, it just went zoop, and it blew my mind. And I look back on that and I think, wow, that was such a severe change. So I wonder if sometimes the chart takes you in that direction. We've always got free will, but is there a certain degree of predestiny in a chart?
well, I think if there's a significant transit and, coming that's doing that, it's pretty much knocking you off your feet and saying, here you go. This is what's handed to you. Yes, I could probably say for myself significantly at my Saturn return, just before my Saturn return, I had a very significant change in my life. So yes, I've experienced that. I was going in one direction, then it just totally 360 degrees turned me off in another direction.
Yes.
So we do experience them like that, for sure.
And I wonder if that's part you mentioned when you were about 80, and that's pretty much your last Saturn transit, if you're lucky enough to get that far. Those unexpected life changes sometimes jolt us on that spiritual path that we didn't expect to go on, because I feel, this is just my perspective, that the whole purpose of this experience on Earth for us as souls is to grow, is to get out of the lower frequencies and move into the higher frequencies,
Oh,
and so
yes.
therefore elevating our souls, our spirit,
Mm.
towards the ultimate. We're not coming back again. Don't want to come back next time, thanks. So part of that unexpected jolt in another direction can happen because it's moving us to that spiritual bent in our
Yes.
lives.
Yes.
And if we're not on it, it can seem even more severe,
Well,
perhaps.
Saturn's the wise old crone teacher. So, he's going to really give you some lessons if you're looking into, looking at the Saturn returns in that sense. And they're not all bad. They're actually all good. They're just getting you on the right path. That's
Mm,
all. They're waking you up,
mm.
to it as well. But, you know,
Fascinating.
mm,
Fascinating. Now let's talk about astronauts
mm.
of this. What is the value of these in-person or small group astrology experiences? And how do they differ from one-on-one consultations or online teachings?
Well, you're not actually giving people personal readings. You're actually people are coming because they actually want to learn about particular, with a subject, or, say like, eclipses that
Mhm.
happen, a couple of times a year, and we just had one recently. What an eclipse actually does to your particular chart, at that time. Or we might, if it's from the beginners, you might actually not have a lot of knowledge. So you really just start from the basics, where you're just talking about planetary, your sun, moon, and ascendant. So, that can take you across quite some time, where people will talk about that. And, we might throw up a chart, not someone else's chart, say a famous person, and we'll get to look at that, and then talk about their chart down the track. Maybe not all together, but we'll have their charts and they'll be able to have a look at it, and then we just chat about it. It depends on what level they're at. They're just beginners. We start from the easy stuff, where they're going, and their sun signs, and
So this
people.
is Brisbane based, so it's an in-person
Yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but if there's the beginners, and then you'll have the intermediates, and then you'll have the advanced. So the advanced want more guts and garters, so to
Mm,
speak, from
mm.
astrology. They don't particularly want, the basics.
Yeah.
But, as a beginner, if someone's coming in, they want to know particularly just, well, what's this particularly planet do, or what's this do, and most of them don't. They're like an empty vessel. They don't really know that much anyway, so they're happy to be filled up,
Mm,
with what their sun sign actually does for them. If you give them too much information, people get too overloaded. So
mm.
you do need to keep it simple. Most people love it. That's why they keep on coming back.
That seems to be the start, doesn't it? Your sun sign, your moon sign, and your rising sign. Start with
Yeah.
those three, the big
Yeah.
three, and from there you learn.
Yeah, well, you can't give them too much more than that, and then, you can work through planetary, each individual planet as time goes on. So, but, I'm still a member of a group that I've been with here in Brisbane since I moved to Brisbane. And prior to that, I used to do cosmobiology in Melbourne, which is another branch of astrology. So you work on a 90-degree dial on that one. That's Evident Reinhardt. It's a very intuitive method, and I used to belong to a group in Melbourne that actually, Cosmo Girls down there, and a lady that actually taught that to us. So that's another fabulous branch of astrology as well.
There's
But
so
yeah,
many.
there's lots of branches. I still go over to, well, she's taught me to do my calculations, Julie. So Julie Day, and she's here in Brisbane as well. So, and she still holds a class once a month through the day now, which is great because some of us don't want to go out at night.
Yeah, I understand that one.
Well, and lots of things changed through COVID.
Mm.
So, and we all get together and we're all a bit more advanced, so we can talk about a lot more topics, but at the same time, we talk about other social things as well.
Mm. I think it's such an interesting language. Language, astrology is such an interesting language. People can
Yes.
get confused and think it's religion or woo-woo or whatever. It's not. It's steeped in history. It's a language of understanding the depths, I
It's
suppose.
tradition, and and there's parts of ceremony that, are based with, as in with religions, as in with astrology as well.
Mm,
So, it's
mm,
it can be a very ceremonial thing.
mm.
Like when, say, we're coming up to the equinoxes, we've done equinox festivals. Then I don't know that they're having one this year, the QFA, but we have a celebration of the equinox, but it's very ceremonial, where
Mm.
people will go in and talk about astrology, but we'll do other things as well, drumming ceremonies
Oh, yes.
and yeah, and people get to talk and that. So, there's lots of things involved around it, that just don't make it totally just the dry old astrology, making it
No.
that ceremonial type of thing, real.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I think people are really, really curious about how it all works and, what we were talking.
Tribes.
Yes, and what we were talking about
We're very
previously.
tribal.
It is tribal. Isn't that funny, I know when I first saw my rising sign, I thought, "Oh, I don't like Aries. I don't like Aries people. I don't like Aries. Oh, no, my rising sign's Aries. Eh." I freaked out and I thought, "How am I gonna cope with Aries? I'm a Cancer, Scorpio, Sun and Moon. Now I've got Aries. What's going on?" And I really didn't like it. I thought, they're horrible. I don't like them. They're rude and they just speak without thinking and they don't consider, this whole barrage of the shadow side of Aries.
Yes.
And why? Because I'd had one experience in my life with an Aries person that wasn't pleasant. So that was it for me across the board. All Aries are a-hole, that was my thing. But the more the more I learnt about it, I thought, "Oh, I quite like that. There's some really good things about the positive side, because
There's
they
some
all have the shadow
eh,
sides."
very positives to being a Mars-orientated person. So
Yeah, thank God, with a double water sign, because otherwise I'd be a frog in a log and I'd just sit there and watch the world go by and not do
which
anything really.
that's right, it would drive you out of bed every day, to do things, so
Yeah,
which is good, in
it
that
is
sense, but
good,
the
it is.
Aries, yes, I have an Aries moon daughter, so I'm very aware of
Ooh,
Aries.
okay. Yeah.
Well, like Aries rules the head too, the head,
Mm.
so
And I think it brings a logical perspective in there because, when you're all water and, water moon or water Neptune and water sun and water Mercury, it's like you've really got to have some common sense and some logic in there somewhere to say, excuse me, you just need your feet to touch the ground just for a little bit. It's, eagles fly, but every now and again they need to land to sort themselves.
come back to water for a drink.
Yes. Yeah, so it's fascinating how, if you look at all your components in your chart, and I believe that everybody's got every sign.
They
Everybody's got
do.
every sign.
It's
Some of
not
them are
it's
hidden.
No, it's not, there are so many other hidden aspects in there as well, but everybody's got a component of everything planetary aspect in there. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
in rulerships, in signs, planets, aspects and everything. I mean, it's a continual clock that's
Mm,
moving through the sky,
mm,
all the time. So,
mm.
the planets are shifting the whole time.
And then you've got your transits and things
Yeah,
on top of
all
your.
the time that's shifting. I've got a little clock pad set up on here where I can watch them click over on a daily basis, and watching them as they change sign and degrees and what have you and that. And that's just how it is, where, it's fluid in motion every day.
Oh, I find it fascinating. For someone that might be curious about astrology, but they're, kind of intimidated about the complex terminology of it all, what's your advice for making astrology accessible and meaningful in everyday life? What would you say to someone who's poking their nose in? about it?
Well, I just, go to someone that's, go to someone and have a consult with them, Make
Mm,
sure if you just want to or join your local group,
mm,
with say like the Brisbane Astrology group in there if you wanted to just stick your head in the door and listen to a guest speaker at some stage, You can
mm,
get online and listen to other states as well. They have their guest speakers as well,
mm,
and they're listed at who they are to see whether you're really interested in it,
mm,
and it's for you. But that's where a small group is probably easier for someone to stick their head in the door
mm,
because they're not so overwhelming as well. Because some of the astrology jargon can be quite confronting,
mm,
and people will run the other way. But
mm,
I mean, the QFA has a big library there. They have an online library. I used to be the librarian and the audio there for about 8 years, but they have an accessible online library now as well. So,
okay.
but if you want to go and actually physically talk to people, going to a meeting or joining in with a small social group like that, that's probably the best way, I think.
That's the best start.
I think that's the best way is for a person to learn because reading books, you're on your own, but there's so
Yes.
much availability online. I mean, it's so much. But
Mm,
I think there's nothing like joining in with a group where you can actually all talk to each other, commonly
yes.
as the tribe, and actually learn things. That's how you learn so
Yes.
much more and have so much joy.
Mm. Absolutely. And it's yes, and it is a lot of fun. It's a serious language. It's a serious thing to learn if you really want to go down that
So
road.
there's
But
a fun side. There's a fun side to it as well. I mean, there's a
mm,
humorous. Mercury is the comedian of our chart as well. So there's a lot of fun in there as well to be had as well.
oh, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to do and learn. And I say to everybody, go and get your chart read. And if you know what time your dog was born and right down to the minute, it's very helpful. If you don't, is there a big issue if you go, oh, look, I know he was born on the 15th of May, but I don't know what time. Does that affect a chart too much?
Well, look, when it's the same as people, we just go off a midday chart.
Hmm.
So, that's all you can do. And the only thing, when you're working with a midday chart, you are reading their sun sign and their moon. You can't really read their ascendant. So that's enough because you're looking at the emotional component, which is the moon, and the sun sign is their personality. So
Mm,
that's going to be a lot to shine through with anyway.
mm.
So that's fine.
Very
As far as I'm
interesting.
concerned, using a midday chart. That's
Okay.
with an animal, and that's likely that you're not going to know what time your animal was born.
No, unless you're a breeder and you're Johnny on the spot, you won't know. They don't
I
put
mean,
that on there.
like I've had the luck and the luxury of doing, breeding, and all our girls have been happy to have their litters at home and do that because they've been in a relaxed environment, they've been taken care of. So
Mm,
they haven't I've only ever had one that's had a C-section. So,
yes.
and out of all the girls that
Fascinating stuff.
mm.
Now, if people want to get in touch with you to either book a reading, do you do readings? Do you do chart
Yes, I
readings
do.
for people?
Yes.
Yeah. And you teach as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to reach out, they can get you through your website,
Yes.
writteninstardust.com.au. What a lovely description, writteninstardust.com.au. And on Facebook, it is Written in Stardust as well. So people can reach you there. Wendy, just before we go, I do always ask my guests one question, and that question would be, if you could give one message to the world right now, and this will be interesting from an astrology perspective, if you could give one message to the world right now, today, now, what would that message be?
Wow. What would it be? From an astrology perspective? Mm.
Or from yours, your
Or from
personal?
mine, from my perspective, I would say keep your heart open, you know? Work from your heart all the time. Like that would be my message. Work from your inner being and your heart and open that part and be authentic as you can with everybody.
That's a
So
beautiful message. Wendy Pleydell, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I have enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's been wonderful. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for being here and for listening to Enlightened Connections. I hope today's conversation offered you insight, reflection, or a deeper sense of connection. If this episode resonated, please follow or subscribe and share it with someone who may benefit. You can also join me inside the Enlightened Connections Facebook community. I'd love to welcome you there. Until next time, take gentle care, stay connected, and trust the whispers.